Well, Yuriy joins me. He's an advisor to Ukraine's defence minister. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Perhaps we could start with the dam. We've just been seeing details of that, hit by a Russian cruise missile. What sort of damage has it created? What sort of flooding has it created in that area?
Good evening. The damage that has been done by this missile strike on the dam in Yuriy is very considerable. The damage, if you measure it in the amount of water that is now leaking, it is leaking at a pace of about 100 cubic meters per second. So it's very significant. And, you know, the level of water in the Ingulet River, where that dam is, has actually risen as well very considerably, up to 3 meters more than normal. Ukrainian special services are doing everything they have to ensure that the situation is under control. But I would just like to repeat what you said earlier, that this is a sign of Russia's impotence, because being unable to achieve any military success on the battlefield, they're taking out their anger and their angst and their weakness, actually, their cowardness on striking civilian infrastructure. And what is interesting, actually, is the reaction of ordinary Russians, right? So it is very common for a lot of people to say that Russia is the Kremlin, but Russia is also the Russian people. And if you look at the reaction of the Russian people at these strikes, it only shows that Russia is a terrorist state through and through, not just the Kremlin. You know, people are joyous because thousands of people in Ukraine were left yesterday in Kharkiv without electricity, today in Yuriy without water. So that's what we're dealing with.
Mr. Sak, I hope you'll stay with us. We're just going to say goodbye to our viewers on PBS. You are watching BBC News. Mr. Sak, thank you for your patience. We just say goodbye to some of our world viewers. Can I talk to you about the general counter-offensive? We've seen a lot of progress in the northeast of the country. Can you explain to us why that is advancing much quicker than down in the south of the country?
Well, yes. As our Minister of Defense, Mr. Alexei Reznikov, explained yesterday, the Kherson region, which is down south, is predominantly an agricultural region. So that means that in Kherson region, there are numerous irrigation channels which are now used by the aggressor as their defense sort of fortification structures, right? So it is much more difficult to conduct these military operations there because of this reason. And another factor is, of course, that the Ukrainian army, unlike the Russian terrorist state, is unable to and will never conduct like carpet bombardment of these areas, right? This was how Russians used to occupy our land from where they were now driven out. They would throw like 50,000 artillery rounds a day in certain areas. Now, we are not doing that. We are just using high-precision strikes on Russian military infrastructure, on their command centers, on their logistic and supply lines. So that's why in the south, we are advancing slower, but we are steadily advancing as well there.
Can you talk to us about some of the reports we've seen of senior Russian military personnel retreating back across the Russian border? There's also been these reports of movements within Crimea. What are you seeing in the Russian movements at the moment?
What we're seeing and what we have been seeing for the last 7 days is a chaotic fleeing of the Russian army. And not just seniors, but everybody is fleeing. They're abandoning their military equipment. They're abandoning their tanks, their armored vehicles, their cannons, their MLRS systems. They're abandoning their people. But instead of, leaving our territory on their tanks, they are, of course, leaving our territory on the cars that they steal from the peaceful citizens. So the looting, which we have observed in cities such as Bucha and Irpin and Borodyanka earlier in April, the looting continues. The local citizens whom we spoke to already after deoccupying those areas, they testify that these guys, they are doing what they're best at, looting, washing machines, kettles, laptops. So this is an army of looters and of terrorists.